5 minutes after the hour. Happy Friday, everybody. It is Free Flower Friday, and at the end of the show, or close to the end of the show, we're going to give away a beautiful $50 bouquet inside of a stainless steel travel mug, courtesy of My Lord's Floral. But for today, we have a pretty big question on the minds of what Anchorage will look like, what Fairbanks will look like, and maybe even an opportunity for our voices to be heard in a much bigger way than they otherwise would be. Welcome to the Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN 95.1 FM. 1080KOAN.com is where we stream live. In the studio with me, I've got Bill Popp, who is the head of the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation. And I guess you might almost call it the Anchorage Economic Defense Corporation, because at this point we could be in some very serious, dire straits if we lost the number of military personnel that they're thinking of reducing forces by. So welcome to the program. Thanks for coming.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I don't know that people understand the size and the impact of military spending and having all of our military here. It's not just economic, of course. I mean, it extends into every area of our life. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what the Army is considering doing and what Alaska faces.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share this with your listeners. So we go back to 2011 and the Budget Control Act that was passed by Congress, otherwise known as sequestration. And this was the decision by Congress for the Army to reduce their troop strength by about 120,000 troops in simple numbers. Told them to go do it. Said you need to cut costs. The wars are winding down in the Middle East and you don't need as many troops. So let's start cutting back. And so the Army, Congress has spoken. They're working on it. They've gone through an analysis process that now has led them to looking at 30 different bases throughout the Army system and network, mainly in the United States, where they are looking at reducing brigade combat teams at these 30 different bases to help reach that goal by 2017.
2 of these are in Alaska.
That's
2
correct.
out of 30.
Right, 2 out of 30. Here at J-Bear, we have the 425 Airborne Brigade. And then in Fort Wainwright in Fairbanks, we have the 125 Stryker Brigade. And these are significant deployments of troops and their dependents here in Alaska. So give you a sense of size, in Fairbanks, it's over 5,000 troops and about 10,000 dependents. So for round number, 15,000 people that would be affected, that would leave our state if that brigade were demobilized.
There's only about 40,000 people, 35,000 people in
in the city of Fairbanks, and just shy of 100, or right around 100,000 in the Fairbanks North Star borough. So, if you look at it from a borough point of view, it's the equivalent of about 15% of their population leaving in about 2 years. Here at J-Bear, the 425 Airborne Brigade is a little over 5,000 troops and a little over 9,000 dependents. So round number, about 14,000 that would be leaving our city if that brigade were to be demobilized by 2017.
Now, military is not concerned with the economic impacts, which obviously would be devastating.
That's correct. The reason I'm telling this story is because we need to be concerned, because the process and how we can affect that process. The Army is interested in strategic issues. The Army is interested in community support and community alignment issues.
Well, now that's an interesting request. And by the way, this is a competition. If people don't realize, we're in competition with Kansas and other places.
That's correct. Absolutely. Hawaii, it's all over the country where these brigades are based. So for Anchorage, if we lose the 425, we lose about just shy of 5% of our city's population in just a few years, about a $500 million impact per year to our economy, when you look at the hundreds of millions of dollars in payroll to the troops and their families, and then the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of local spend in goods and services from local businesses, and then a little bit of indirect impact. We didn't want to overstate it because we don't know how much of that payroll gets spent off base versus on base. But we know that the military is our friends and neighbors. The Army very definitely is our friends and neighbors.
Safe to say nobody is going to escape the economic impacts of this in Anchorage.
It's going to pinch. It's going to pinch hard.
And this is not even including reductions in state budget, the oil changes, and the reductions in forces that may come from that.
If it happens, it's kind of misery on top of woe. And so that's why we should all be concerned about this. Now, The military is looking at this and using strategic considerations, and I think Alaska's got a good story to tell there. Geographically, we're closer to all the hot spots in the world than any other base in the United States. I mean, by hours in some cases, in terms of being able to deploy troops. So you can think of it as sort of the tip of the spear in terms of first response, either by Air Force or by Army personnel.
We've got some strategic case to be made here.
Right.
And I'm talking with Bill Popp, head of the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation. I need to give them the website and things to look for because there's a lot of information coming out here, and I don't want to miss this. aedcweb.com. And you can Google, what was it again?
You can Google Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, or you can Google Visit Anchorage. It's up on both websites because our two organizations were asked by Mayor Sullivan to spearhead the effort and co-chair the effort to rally the community for this listening session.
Okay, well, let's tell people what we're asking them to do, and we'll get back in some of the details of why it's important that they do.
So on Monday night from 5 to 6, we are holding a community rally for the troops just before the Army delegation holds its listening session here in Anchorage from 6 to 9:30.
So 5 to 6 p.m. down at Denina
Center.
or thereabouts.
Yeah, from 5 to 6.
You think everybody will be able to get down there? Because I'm expecting we're going to have a lot of people.
I hope so. The good thing is that that's when most people who work downtown are heading out. So there's going to be a lot of parking spaces opening up. The garages are going to be emptying out. The street parking is going to be available. There's great street parking over along 9th Avenue in that corridor along the Park Strip, which is not that far away from the Denina Center. You got the JCPenney garage. The state garage will open up. The municipal garages will open up. And then even the 5th Avenue garage, that's not really that far away from the Denina Center. And the weather's not too bad. We're looking pretty good. The event's going to be inside at the Denina Center in the atrium and on the different landings in the lobby. So it's going to be weather friendly for families to come down and show their support for the troops. There's going to be music. There's going to be real inspirational things going on. We're going to show a real positive, proactive message that we love the troops and we don't want our friends and neighbors to leave.
And oddly enough, this makes a difference. This is part of what they're considering is what does your community think?
Not only what does your community think, but what kind of, if you think about it this way, what kind of return on investment for these hundreds of millions of dollars that they spend in their community do they get? So they get good education. That's one of our messages. They get great schools. They get good university, post-secondary education, and workforce training for the troops and their dependents. They get good healthcare supplemental services for things that are not offered by the base medical system. They don't have to leave the state to get healthcare. They can come right into our phenomenal healthcare system over in the UMed district. We've got good social safety networks here in town for when troops and their families hit hard times. We've got the ability to help support them through those hard times until they get back on their feet. And, great quality of life. That's another important thing. This is a volunteer military. They can choose the career that they want, and the military wants to be able to offer them postings that they enjoy, that they, remember, and that they actually want to be at. And then they really look at the veterans care too. Is there a good community of veterans services? Is there good opportunities for veterans to find employment, separating troops to find employment? And I think Alaska's got a great story to tell there with the highest per capita number of veterans in the country.
Bill Popp is in studio with me, Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, aedcweb.com, a huge rally. And look, I hope we turn out over 10,000. That would be my hope. This is important enough. If you are headed out to the valley, if you're headed home for the evening, delay that until 6 o'clock. That's how important this is. This is that big of a deal. If we can turn out 3 or 4 times as many, and we're up against other places, some places turn out 600, some places turned out 2,000. So we really, really need to improve upon that. Thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate it. I know you've got a busy schedule ahead of you. Bill Popp with Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, AEDC. And we're talking about something you need to go to. I will be going to on Monday, 5 to 6 p.m. Of course, I won't be there till after 6, but we'll
do the listening session because citizens can do that too. We want to hear your voice.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you.
All right. You're listening to the Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN 95.1 FM at 1080KOAN.com. Stay tuned. 17 minutes after the hour. Love to hear from you. 569-1080 here on 95.1 KOAN, 1080KOAN.com. And you can go out to the Facebook page or glenbiegel.com. Find all the stories that I will be talking about, covering today. And I'm most interested in, of course, a huge change has occurred. And it's probably going to take days, weeks, maybe even months in order to piece together exactly what has happened. And I don't want to jump into it too early, but I will be giving some of the details of what the governor is doing with the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation board. And you will remember that the entire legislature freaked out when he removed 3 very talented people, including Drew Pierce. And now he's named his people to put on the board, and he's also retasked them with a very significant change in their duties. So I'm very excited to tell you about it, at least give you my thoughts. I'd love to hear from you, though. 569-1080. Can you imagine? I mean, we're already looking at a very serious economic time ahead of us. If we lost another 14,000 people out of the city of Anchorage, if they lost 15,000 out of Fairbanks, by the way, crushing, devastating. It's hard to even imagine because Alaska never experienced that. We went through a downturn back in 86 and 87 from some tax act that they passed called TEFRA, Tax Equity and Fairness Reform Act. And that caused all kinds of trouble here in the state of Alaska. And we did shed population. But, I mean, the idea that we would lose 30,000 people just from our military bases over the course of, a year and a half, devastating. The good thing is, I guess maybe you don't buy it. I'm willing to take a risk on it. Even if I didn't buy it, I'd still go. I'm going to call my family up, and we got 10 people. We're all going to head down there. That's how big of a deal this is. Yeah, you got to go all the way downtown. I did, by the way, ask this, Bunny. I said, is there any way that we could congregate somewhere else and they could add all of us wherever we were into the numbers that are down at Denina? And he said, no, he couldn't figure that out. I think it's just too late. Maybe if they'd come up with that idea before. Because the hard thing is sending us all downtown. I
mean, Anchorage, it's not that big. So it's not like it takes a long time to even get downtown from the other side of town.
But what we should have is 15 to 20,000 people there. I mean, honestly, we have 6,000 people go watch a hockey game.
Right.
If you understand, This is your house might go down to half of its value. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. It's that serious of a situation here. We're not talking about a hockey game. I would be shocked if if people knew about it. Now, I will grant that most people probably are not listening. I don't think most people listen to most of whatever goes on. They go home, they watch TV, they have their dinner,
Yeah, but whoever is listening needs to put it on their Facebook, tell their friends about it, and then word will get around.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we will do that here on our side as well now that we know about it. But it's that big of a deal. Here's the kind of things, though, that the Army, this is a reduction in Army, Fort Wainwright and J-Bear here. Fort Wainwright might lose 15,000 total people, 5,000 plus troops, and 10,000 dependents. And J-Bear might lose over 5,000 troops and about 9,000 dependents. It will have a dramatic impact on Alaska. There's no doubt about it. 569-1080 if you have any questions. So this is part of force reduction, and I don't think this is going to change, by the way. I don't really see any likelihood that they're going to step away from the force reduction because even though the economic impacts are fairly significant, the Democrats do not want to see a whole lot of people in the military anymore. And I think the pressure on the Republican side is to really cut the budget. And the way that they designed this, by the way, they designed it in such a way. This is the cost cutting. I don't Bill Pop was just in here, and he reminded me of what the name was. But sequestration, that's what it was. So in sequestration, this is what the Democrats thought the Republicans would never be able to agree to. In other words, they would agree to it to start with, and then they would come back and think about it again and think, that was crazy. We can't do that. Half the cuts that they wanted were going to come out of the military. Half the cuts for the entire United States. Military only makes up something like 18% total federal spending, something like that, 18, 20%. So half the cuts are going to come out of 1/5 of the budget. And they thought, well, the Republicans they'll never accept this. There's no possible way that they would put up with this. This is the Glen Biegel Show. 423 is the time. 569-1080 is the number, and I would love to hear from you. The economic impacts of this force change will be very, very dramatic. Obviously, for Fairbanks, it will be devastating, and for Anchorage, a loss of $500 million. It's just hard to imagine what that will do, because we're not that big of a community. We cannot sustain with a drop in state spending, the drop in federal spending. Our oil industry, Schlumberger is headed over to Russia to try and develop oil over there. It's a lot more sure of a bet than Alaska, which is a sad thing to say. Let me go to the phones here, 569-1080, and talk to Jerry. Jerry, welcome.
How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing just fine, thanks.
The thing that I didn't hear Bill say, and I'm not too sure, maybe he did, maybe I missed it. Does this mean that these people are going to be dismissed from the military, or are they just going to be moved to somewhere in another base?
I think that these are forced reductions, and over the course of the next 18 months, these folks will no longer be in the military.
Okay. Well, then my other question would be, why are we cutting troops in the United States when we can move them away from military bases located all over the 100 and some countries that we have, like New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, Germany? Why do we have troops stationed in those places, which the cost would be prohibitively higher when you have to service them? Why not reduce those areas instead of reducing the areas in the United States?
Bring them home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think you're talking the language a lot of people believe we should be talking, and I don't make those kind of decisions, but I'm glad that you made the suggestion.
And by the way, I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican, but I do not believe in reducing our military force, like you indicated earlier that Democrats are trying to reduce our military.
Well, Jerry, my point on that was that they made a deal with the Republicans. They said, okay, well, we're going to do sequestration, but half the cuts are going to come out of the military. Now, their bet was they didn't care about the military. They cared about their other government programs. But their bet was Republicans will not be able to handle that because they do care about the military.
Well, then bring them home.
Yeah.
There's where your cuts can be. Bring them home.
Bring them home
to our own shores and reduce the cost of overseas spending. That doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
Well, unfortunately, Jerry, common sense may be a little short down in...
That's seriously what we're lacking. Maybe our good Senator, newly elected Sullivan, can do something about it because he served in the military,
yes.
Has some experience, where most of the people seemingly in Congress are, well, I shouldn't say most, but yeah, most are non-military people.
Oh, yeah. No, there's very few military left in Congress.
They don't understand it.
That's right. Are you going to go down to this rally?
I think I will, yes, Monday night.
I hope so, yeah. 5 to 6 p.m. down at Denina. Yeah. It's an inside rally, and we got to fill that place up.
That sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that.
Bet.
569-1080. That is the number. We are looking at a different future here, and I'm talking here again about the gas line. Exxon put out a statement today that basically said, we realize that the governor has decided that he's going to start up this Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation and that he's only going to choose one project. Why would the governor, tasking his people with his project, choose Exxon's project? And so Exxon, it looks like, is going to step away from a gas line project altogether. Now, I don't know whether I'm right on this, and this is total speculation. But if I were Exxon, this is what I'd be doing. Whew. I would feel total relief. I look at Shell's experience in the state of Alaska, and I'm thinking, what kind of nutcase would invest money in the state of Alaska? You can get sued by every environmentalist corporation on the planet. Sally Jewell comes up here, goes out to some place that has 100 people in it, Kivalina, which has been falling into the ocean for decades. We never had a permanent settlement there for good reason. And from that, she's decided to totally change what Arctic policy is going to be. For a community of 100 people, I mean, I would look at investing in Alaska and go, well, whatever. So they've invested in the North Slope, and I think they're going to get paid back for that. I got a lot to cover on this, and I want to get to it when we come back. The Glen Biegel Show, 569-1080 is the number. And we're on 95.1 FM and 1080KOAN.com. 27 minutes before the hour. Big rally coming up on Monday. Even if you have plans, I guess I would suggest that you cancel them. Even you have a pass to skip this broadcast. And that's how important this is. Is that foolish?
That sounds perfectly reasonable.
Have I crossed the line here? Have I gone?
They can always
wacko?
take their smartphone though and listen to it.
But that's true. Yeah, go out to 1080koan.com and you can listen to the podcasts live. It is, well, the impact to Anchorage would be enormous. The impact to Fairbanks would be devastating. And they're talking about troop force reductions here. Two of our Army bases, J-Bear and Fort Wainwright, and talking about a significant percentage of the population up in Fairbanks and $500 million taken out of the local Anchorage economy. There is no way you're not going to feel that. So if you have ever had a reason to go down and partay and let the feds know what you think, the purpose of this, by the way, Bill Popp was in earlier in the hour, is to show community support. They're going to be judging the strategic value of having Fort Wainwright and J-Bear with plenty of troops to be able to respond quickly should something heat up. But they said that we will be judged on our community support of our military. And they're talking about healthcare and schools, the safety net. I went to the Armed Services YMCA event, military appreciation event. There were 500 people there. And it was just a fantastic, amazing event. So I'd be shocked if we didn't have thousands and thousands of people. If you're headed out to the valley, don't go. Stay here in town. 5 to 6, they're going to be counting, okay? We already know what the numbers were in Kansas. We know what the numbers were in Cleveland. I think those are a couple of places that he listed. We have to show in order for people to know how important this is to us, and they're going to be counting the numbers for us. The quality of life that our veterans and our military people experience, our support for veterans, and just in general support for the military. So the rally is 5 to 6 p.m. down at Denina. It is an indoor event. I hope that there's so many people that you can't possibly get everybody indoors. I mean, that's really what we need to do. If it's possible for you to take you and your family, then that is exactly what I'm planning on doing after the show is over. There will be people to speak. There will be opportunities to speak and give your thoughts on it as well. Your phone calls welcome here on the program, 24 minutes before the hour on the Glen Biegel Show. The hour sponsor for this hour of the program, by the way, is the one person everyone needs in their life. Well, and you would think that might be me. Well, that's probably true as well. But no, this is a conservative dentist, and you'll find out why he's conservative if you become a patient of his. He does everything he does. He only does what's needed, and he does it well. And then if you also become a patient of his, you'll find out what is on the ceiling of a conservative dentistry. His name, Dr. Dan Kiley, 562-9209, online at lakeotisdental.com and at 4050 Lake Otis Parkway. That's how you get in touch with him. We are entering kind of a new era in the state of Alaska, and Bill Walker is ushering it in, I suppose, much more swiftly than it might otherwise have been. He's of a school that believes in the owner state, and one of his, Wally Hickel, one of his mentors, said that the biggest mistake that Alaska made in her history was not owning the Alyeska pipeline. I have a few thoughts on that. Number one, we didn't have any money. I don't know if people are aware of this. We didn't have all that much money, so we couldn't have owned the Alyeska pipeline. We didn't have anything to put in the kitty, if you understand what I'm saying. We do now, and I believe what Governor Walker is doing is putting our permanent fund, you could say at risk, but I mean, I think he's getting ready essentially to invest it. Now, I never expected anything out of the permanent fund, so this is not a big deal to me. I'm like, they ought to carve the permanent fund up take half of it and give it to the people and the rest of it, use for government. But this, maybe we'd get a gas line out of the deal. So I wonder whether or not, now this, my big question is, here's what he's thinking of doing. There are 4 different facilities, 4 different areas of expenditure in order for us to get gas to market. There is a pre-processing facility that will exist up on the North Slope, cost about $15 billion. That's $15 billion with a B. That can be sued and stopped by the environmentalists. Trust me. There's a gas pipeline, which could cost upwards of around $20 billion. So that's $15 billion plus $20 billion. All right. So we're up to 35. There is a Valdez, or it could go on our side of the drink here. It could go over in Kenai. That was the last place that that's another $15 to $20 billion. We're getting close to the number that they're talking about. It's somewhere around $60 billion in order to get this, maybe even $65 billion. And that's if we're not sued and delayed and they don't, the steel doesn't end up going somewhere else. I mean, there are all kinds of risks that are associated with this huge, the largest construction project in United States history. I think this would cost well more than what it cost to build the Panama Canal. We're talking about a massive, unbelievable, huge undertaking. And Governor Walker is moving swiftly toward the position that he thinks that the state of Alaska is the right group to run this, the right group essentially to own all of these facilities. The one that I haven't covered, by the way, are the boats that it takes in order to get it over to customers. And those can cost, I think, $1 billion, $1.5 billion per boat, per ship. And you need a lot of them because we're going to have a lot of gas coming off of our line. All right, so those are sort of the costs that we're looking at. You get upwards of $65 billion, and I always think that their costs. Our in-state pipeline, they were expecting the Trans-Alaska pipeline, by the way, to cost $1 billion. It cost $7 billion. So if the costs start escalating at all in this, our permanent fund is definitely on the line. Every bit of it, every part of it, the potential for massive risk and massive loss is here. I'm not saying this is a bad project, by the way. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure all that out. But I want to talk more about this. Nat Hertz has tweeted out the Exxon response to what the governor has said, which is basically, we're thinking of doing this project ourselves. We may, I've appointed people onto the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation board. And I take it that Walker, what he says is this: he's going to go get agreements from customers who want to, and will lock in a rate for 30 to 40 years. My understanding is there aren't any companies that do that. There are governments that do that. China locked in a deal with Gazprom in Russia for $10 per 1,000 cubic feet of gas. And they locked that deal in for 30 years. But I don't know that companies, the longest one that I found was a 15-year lock-in, and that's when the pipeline had already been built. I mean, here you're talking about 10 years at least before we get gas, and then they would have to lock in for 30 to 40 years after that. I've never heard of that. Now, the governor says that he can get this to happen, which to me would be quite an eye-opener. And it would say something very specific about this. I've got a lot to cover on this because this is a difficult issue. And just to let you know how different I am, I guess, than other people who say, look, these things can only be built by companies. That's just not true. All over the world, governments are building pipelines, financing pipelines. So I don't think that's the case. You'd say, well, what should we allow it to be built if it's going to be built by the government? We're going to put up our permanent fund, $52 billion on the line, baby. So the question for you is, do you feel comfortable with this level of risk on something that may never pay a dividend. We may lose everything. I'm not saying it's a bad project, but those are the kind of things we have to weigh out. You're listening to the Glen Biegel Show, 17 minutes before the hour. Would love to hear from you. 569-1080 is the number. We are on 95.1 FM and also 1080KOAN.com. That's where we stream live. Go out to my Facebook page. Check me out there. And also, you can call Bonnie. She's always here answering the phone, taking care of the producer activities. We got Hans Rodvik is going to be up with us after this break and talking about something that Americans for Prosperity is going to put on here shortly. I'm looking forward to that. I'd love to take your phone calls as well. 16 minutes before the hour. Twelve minutes before the hour, Country Financial, they have been protecting cars, homes, farms, and lives for 85 years. And if you have not gone through with a financial professional what your responsibilities are, what you should be covering your family in case of today, and also what your future might look like if you do the right things. They can help with all of that. Hope you give them a call. 866-COUNTRY. Go out to countryfinancial.com. And Mike Daniels and his team, he's got 13 locations all over Alaska, 5 here in Anchorage, 5 out in the valley, from Kenai up to Fairbanks. Give them a call, 866-COUNTRY. Country is spelled
COUNTRY.
Let me go to the phones here. 569-1080 is the number. Hans Rodvik is going to be with us here in just a minute. But before that, I want to go to Tom McGrath. Tom, welcome.
Good afternoon, sir.
Well, we've gotten some pretty serious information from a couple of different sources, but Bill Popp was on a little earlier. Can you imagine if they took 5,000 soldiers out of Anchorage and, even worse, 5,000 out of Fairbanks?
No, and, of course, I came up here with the military, and near and dear to my heart, there's a lot of retired military in the state, and we like having the military here. And I think the military likes to be here because we treat them so well. And I think that'll be showed out when we have the rally on Monday.
5 to 6 p.m. down at Denina Center. Tom, I'd be shocked. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what people could possibly be doing that would be more important. Not even listening to this show is more important than this.
Well, and there's lots of places to park downtown. Downtown people are getting off work, and they'll either stay for the rally or they'll vacate parking spots. So there'll be lots of parking spots, and I just encourage everybody to be there. But the pipeline deal,
yes,
we have $60 billion in the bank. So if we went to build the pipeline, we would have to borrow as much as what we have, and which is not it's not very smart to borrow 100% of what you got.
Yeah. But do you take it like I do that Bill Walker could be putting our permanent fund, could be putting the entire value of it at risk here?
He could be putting everything at risk, but yeah. I look at the oil companies, those great oil companies that have been our very best friends for 30, 40 years now. And the major four, Exxon, BP, ConocoPhillips, Shell, they got $800 billion in current assets, and they have $260 billion in money, in cash. And sure, they wouldn't use that cash to build a pipeline. They would go to the bond market and borrow it because the price of money right now is so incredibly cheap. But they have the wherewithal to do what we could only think about doing. And so let them do it. I mean, it would be just incredibly short-sighted to spend every dime you got to do something that somebody else can do better, faster, and they actually know what they're doing.
Well, I take from what the governor has already done with these replacements for the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation. They are all of the same mind as he is, that this is something that we should invest the entire permanent fund in. And also his announcement and his write-up that went into the Alaska Dispatch News that basically said, we are going to start a different project, and it could be funded by what he calls customers.
Well, and the one appointment that he made, Mr. Short, now tell me, Glenn, is it because Alice Rogoff is Mr. Short's friend, or is it because Lyman Hoffman is Mr. Short's father-in-law?
I thought Mr. Short was actually Alice Rogoff's business partner.
Well, she's on one of his boards.
Okay.
But it's amazing to me that
it's going to get messy is basically what you're saying.
It is so
because some of the
is a reason.
Some of the benefits here, and maybe the only benefits for this, because it's very possible that a whole bunch of money is spent. Some people will suck up $1 million there, $10 million here, $10 million there, and that we don't have a pipeline to speak of. That there's no project, that we never finish it because we either got sued out of existence, we ran out of money. People just decided, you know what, there's no possible way you can provide gas to these eastern markets for the price everybody else can.
Well, we look at the dam. We've been looking at building a major dam in this area 3 times now. We started in the 50s, then we looked at it again in the 80s. Now we're looking at it again. And how many hundreds of millions of dollars have we spent talking about and studying whether we should build a major dam?
Some people got paid for all that talking.
And what have we built so far?
Nothing. And we're not going to build anything. The environmentalists have decided now that this is not a project that they like anymore, right. And they run this place. If people aren't familiar,
so let's let those that know what they're doing do that.
Tom, I hate to tell you, I think it's too late. I will read Exxon's response to Governor Walker's statement, and I think what it means is they're out of the game. And I think that they dropped so fast that my take on it is they're happy that they don't have to even look at this project. That if Alaska wants to go out and find $65 billion of somebody else's money or their money to invest in it, they're happy to get out of the way.
I hope you're wrong, and I hope that our best friends, the major oil companies, build this gas line if it ever is built, and that we don't put all of the state's resources on the line to do it.
Well, that's what it's going to take. Hey, Tom, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good day. Take care.
Let me go to Hans. Hans, how are you?
I'm doing good, Glenn. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. Tell me about this event that's coming up here.
Right. So Americans for Prosperity is going to be hosting a town hall forum out in the valley at the Wasilla Sports Complex regarding Medicaid expansion. Now, as you know, the Supreme Court back in 2012 ruled that part of the Affordable Care Act was unconstitutional, and that part is dealing with Medicaid. And so we at Americans for Prosperity think that Medicaid expansion here in Alaska is something that should not happen for, just a couple of reasons. Number one, the federal government is over $18 trillion in debt, and adding another entitlement program to the list of programs already out there is probably not a smart move. Secondly, the Medicaid expansion goes to healthy, working age, able-bodied, childless adults that in reality should be able to go out, get a job, earn some money, and cover their own health insurance.
We're creating a whole new segment of society as welfare recipients, government welfare, federal welfare recipients.
That is absolutely right. Governor Walker and Commissioner Davidson a couple of weeks ago, came out and unveiled their plans, how to do the rollout for Medicaid expansion. And they touted the line that this is free federal money, that we have nothing to worry about.
No such thing as free.
Exactly. The free federal money is money that comes out of the paychecks of hardworking Americans and Alaskans. And national polls throughout the country have shown that Americans overwhelmingly do not believe that working age, healthy, childless adults should have access to free Cadillac health insurance provided by taxpayers.
Hey, I couldn't agree more. I do have this question for you, and I actually want to get together with somebody from Americans for Prosperity and work this out. We're talking here to Hans Rodvik about an event that's coming up March 3rd. Is that what it was?
Yep, March 3rd from 5 to 7:30 p.m. I will put this up on your Facebook page after we go here.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm going to do my best to try and get out there. What day is March 3rd, by the way?
March 3rd, I believe, is a Tuesday.
Okay. Here's my question. I don't necessarily believe that just because you add 42,000 people onto the rolls, you are adding any money. Am I crazy? I mean, could it just be that we take the same amount of money and we just distribute it around to 42,000 new welfare recipients, but there is no new money?
Well, the thing is, with regards to the 42,000, the big question is, how in the world are these people even going to be able to sign up for Medicaid under the current system? Because as Commissioner Davidson has revealed back in December, the current system is already overburdened. Alaskans who are already eligible for Medicaid are having trouble enrolling, and doctors and service providers throughout the state simply aren't even being paid. So the question really is how can we justify adding 40,000 people to a new welfare system, to an already broken and costly system?
Hans, I don't for a second believe that any of the numbers that these folks are using are right. I don't believe 42,000 is right. I don't believe any of the numbers that they say we're going to get in new federal expenditures here in the state of Alaska. I think it's all a shell game, and we're going to end up with the same amount of money, but just with a whole bunch more people on welfare.
Yeah, Governor Parnell...
I think he did the right thing. Hey, Hans, Americans for Prosperity, March 3rd, that's the event. Go out, check out americansforprosperity.com and find out more about it, or .org, americansforprosperity.org to find out more.
Yep, thanks again, Glenn.
Appreciate it, Hans. 569-1080. You're listening to The Glen Biegel Show. 5 minutes after the hour. Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN 95.1 and 1080KOAN.com. Give us a call, 569-1080. It is Free Flower Friday. And as it historically is, it's Fair Game Friday. Anything on your mind is fair game. My Lord's Floral at the 15 minutes before the end of the show so we can announce who won. We'll be providing for whoever the, 74th caller is. Is that okay? Good idea, Bonnie? No. Actually, she's not in for that. Can you imagine having to field 74 calls? Be miserable. We'll take probably caller number, 4, something like that, at the 45-minute break. But they give a beautiful $50 bouquet inside of a stainless steel travel mug. And that's courtesy of My Lord's Floral, 522-2535. If you have never gone into My Lord's Floral, you will be amazed. It's an experience. It's not just a flower shop. It's more than that. And they have unique arrangements that you will find nowhere else. Again, I'd love to hear from you, 569-1080, our sponsor for this hour of the program, A&A The Shop. If you're looking for somebody to take care of your Subaru, how about this? Alaska's independent Subaru service center and the best car shop of the year, 6 out of the last 12 years. Yeah, it's pretty good. 36-month, 36,000-mile warranty, 562-3919 is their phone number here in town, and out in Eagle River, 696-2096. If you have a Subaru, I now have a place for you to take it. Let me give you a couple of off-the-wall stories. And here's the first one. Millennials ditching their TV sets at a record rate. What's the baseline for this? It's kind of amazing with Netflix and your smartphone. You don't need a TV anymore. People are, and so they actually had 20% fewer young adults watch their TV sets in prime time, 20% less than 4 years ago. You have to know that television is just about gone for people who are 18 to 34. That's amazing. 20% fewer people in just 4 years. Now it's binge watching, and you can watch as many episodes as much as you want. And I think you think about how many, I don't know, they used to be soap operas or whatever, but, and there were dozens of them, it seemed like. There are so many shows that the average person probably only will watch 2 or 3 of them. But you could watch 100 different television programs these days. Get them on Netflix and watch as many as you want at a time. Millennials are figuring all that out. It's on demand, not by somebody who judges on the television station that you should want to watch this at 6:30 tonight. No, actually, I want to watch it at 10:30 tonight. Is there another way I could get that? Oh, look, my smartphone. Oh, look, my Netflix account. Survey finds violence against women widespread in Western Alaska region. The results of the Alaska Victimization Survey, Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence in the Nome Census Area, authored by the University of Alaska Justice Center. For more than 5 years, the researchers have been surveying women in regions around the state, and the results are not good. Sexual violence or violence by an intimate partner or both in their lifetimes: Bristol Bay 52%, Anchorage 51%, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta 51%, Juneau 55%. Out of every 100 adult women in the state, 59 had experienced intimate partner violence, sexual violence, or both. That was a result in 2010. I have a suggestion for you, and my suggestion is, it's probably hard to hear if you're a fan of big government, but I don't make any apologies for that. We have the largest expenditure through government of any place in the country. We have the highest violence rate of any place in the country. They are linked. They are absolutely linked. One is the other. If you pay people and do not have jobs for them, they become violent. Men need a job. They need a purpose. They want to be kings. They want to give rules. They want to have something to say. and a purpose in life. And if you take their job from them, you've taken a vast amount of what they are. And their reaction to it is very, very awful. It's very awful. And that's what people are finding out. It is not divorced. These things are totally linked in my mind. And they actually have found, and when they do surveys of these remote places, that they are linked. Joblessness leads to violence. Is everybody who's violent jobless? No. But in these places where there are so few jobs, a friend of mine went out to a bush village one time, and he's got brown skin, so he was out with a whole bunch of native boys, and they were 16 to 25, 16 to 30 years old. They started drinking around 10 o'clock in the morning. And the racial hatred that was displayed there, these are people with absolutely no purpose in life. They don't have a job. They don't have any purpose. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nothing for them to do. The anger and the hatred that he experienced as he sat there in this group overwhelmed him. He'd never experienced anything like it. There was anger towards the white man. What do you expect people to do? They have to come up with some kind of a scapegoat for the fact that, well, look, here I am miserable. I started drinking at 10 o'clock this morning. I've got nowhere to go. I've got no rules to give. I've got nobody to lead. I don't have a purpose. So I find a purpose, and that purpose is to hate somebody who I can blame. Oh, the violence in Alaska is a very, very definite cause. Can you imagine 59 out of 100 women, out of every 100 women experience violence in the state of Alaska? What kind of a place do we live in? Are you serious? This is what you wanted. This is the state that you wanted. This is why I think Alaska is about ready to experience a total reawakening, a total rebranding, something that's going to be vastly better than what we've always had, which is having more money and having to decide, well, we've got more money than we can possibly ever use. Let's just spend it, spend it, spend it, spend it. That's coming to an end. And I think we're going to have responsibility re-enter the lexicon here in Alaska. A bill seeks to transfer federal lands to state control. Mike Chenault, fighting on behalf of so many Alaskans, calling for the federal government to transfer to the state lands it controls in Alaska by January 1, 2017. Just after or actually it would be just before the next president takes office. Wouldn't that be great? Can you imagine how we could transform the state? How about this for an option? We give out 10 acres. Anybody who wants to come to Alaska, the only requirement is you got to build something on that land, some place to live. Could be a cabin, it could be a shed, could be something, anything you could live in. And you have to build that in the next 4 years. I think there are a lot of people in this world who want to be landowners and they don't know how to do it. And if we gave some of Alaska's lands to people who wanted to come up here, this is kind of what we did way back when. We invited people up here. They got 40 acres. I don't think you need 40 acres in order to get up here. The problem with having 40 acres rather than 5 or 10 is people end up being so far away from each other that it's almost impossible to build the roads you need, especially if you're going to get sued. So that would be my suggestion if we wanted to try and repopulate Alaska. Very important upcoming event, by the way, Monday. And Bill Popp was in here from the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation. He told us about it. The military is looking at downsizing, and they are taking essentially a numeric testimony for the city of Anchorage. Our community support is going to be judged next Monday down at Denina Center, 5 to 6 p.m. And the effect on Anchorage, and particularly the effect on Fairbanks, will be absolutely devastating if they end up taking these troops from this very strategic location. Make sure to go down Denina Center, AEDCweb.com. This is the Glen Biegel Show, 14 minutes after the hour. 17 minutes after the hour. Who has the highest ratings of any used car place in town? And it's by far, by the way, Payless Car Sales. My good friend Ali over there and all of his sales staff, JC, Russell, they do it a different way. It's one of the reasons why I represent them and why I'm suggesting people go and check out all of their inventory. In addition to the fact that Ali was a listener to the program for a long period of time, he's a great businessman, and I know after he explained all the different things that he does in order to ensure top quality cars at a great price, I became a believer myself. 677 Auto, 919 East 5th Avenue. That gets you to Payless Car Sales. You can see all of their inventory online at paylesssales.com. And make sure to go and talk to them. I think next week we're going to give away a couple more $50 gas cards from Payless Sales if you're looking for a car. And I will even go on a ride along with you. I love nice cars. I don't know that I have owned a nice car in my life, but if I was going to get one, I would definitely get one from Ali. But I will ride along with you in your nice car. How about that? That's coming up next week. Today, by the way, is Free Flower Friday and Fair Game Friday. 569-1080 is the number if you want to participate in the program. At the 15 minutes before the hour, we will be giving away that beautiful $50 bouquet courtesy of My Lord's Floral. And they are at 76th in the Old Seward Highway, 522-2535. And Dot at mylordsfloral.com also would love to take care of you. She became, did you ever hear of Dot at mylordsfloral.com? She's the voice of their commercials, and apparently people fell in love with her, and so they would like pursue her. So it became kind of a thing.
That's so cute.
Yeah, it is a little.
They fell in love with her voice.
With her voice, and they wanted to know everything about her. And so I think I don't know whether it freaked her out or what the deal was, but it definitely became something that she had to deal with for the next several years. Anyway, Dot at mylordsfloral.com. She's very nice, by the way. She's also very, very, very young, as it turns out.
So she's like 50?
No, I think she was 17 at the time. So she might be 19 or 20.
Young is becoming relative to me anymore.
Aha!
When I was 17, my sister was turning 30, and I threw her an over-the-hill party.
Ooh.
Yeah, now I really regret that.
Uh-huh. Your time is coming. I did want to let people know I am officially going to have a new favorite food at about 8 o'clock today. And this Brian Hoff, who's actually going to be the DJ, or he's going to be the master of ceremonies, I think is the appropriate term, for my daughter's wedding. And he loves cheese. And my new official favorite food at the end of this fasting day is going to be cheese sandwiches and tomato soup.
Oh, that's a good meal.
Oh,
we
yeah.
have that at least once a week.
Woo! Oh, I just can't even tell you how much I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be great.
What kind of cheese is that?
It's just going to be American cheese, whatever the meltiest kind of cheese I can find in the house, I'm sure.
Yeah, you got to have some that melts really well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. We are finding out more about what... there was somebody who put on my Facebook page that the downsizing that's going on this year is very similar to downsizing that's gone on before, and that people will not be losing their position in the military. That's not true. The downsizing that's going on now is from sequestration, where they actually have cut the budget, and their target is 120,000 fewer troops in the military. Those cuts will occur over the next 18 months to 3 years. So these are people who they will be gone from here. They will be gone from the military. They're thinking about moving an entire brigade, 5,000 plus soldiers who will leave Alaska and then leave the military as they do force reductions of around 120,000 troops out of the Army. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood. Yeah, this is not your year 2000 military reorg. This is the year 2015, And this is sequestration, and the Democrats demanded that half the cuts to the government come from the military when they made the deal with the Republicans, thinking that Republicans would totally back out and say, all right, well, we don't want to see the military cut, therefore, especially with half the cuts that are going on out there. Kind of surprising, but that's where we are. No, the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation is leading the charge on this, by the way. Go out to aedcweb.com or Google Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, and you will find one of the most important things that you probably can do. I don't know of a larger economic impact that you doing something can actually put off. What we're talking about here is losing 5,000 troops out of Anchorage and 9,000 of their dependents. Fairbanks would suffer far, far more. 5,000 troops, 10,000 dependents. It'd be like Fairbanks losing somewhere around 20% of their population. Here in Anchorage, it would be a 5% reduction in population and $500 million taken out of our local economy, if you can imagine that. Anyway, one of the things that they are going to judge places on, and we are up against Kansas and we're up against Cleveland. I don't know all the different places, but there are 30 different locations that they're considering doing force reductions at. And again, these are soldiers who will not be in the military. I know somebody put something up on my Facebook page that said, no, they're just being reorganized. They're going to be sent somewhere else. No, they'll be out of the military. One way or the other, the 120,000 troops are going to be gone from the military. The question is, are they gone from here or are they gone from somewhere else? But we're up against a whole bunch of other places. 30 different military bases, Army bases, are facing the potential for reduction, and 2 of them are in Alaska, with the potential of losing 5,000 out of each of the military bases here, looking for a total of 120,000 troops to be reduced out of our Army. Obviously, we have a great strategic advantage, but we still need to come out and show community support for our military. A sinking village on the front lines of climate change debate. This is the most ridiculous thing. This just goes to show you how powerful the media is and what a run of the place the people who are environmentalists have. Okay, this is a village, I think it's of 120 people. Sally Jewell, the Interior Secretary, actually went to this village. She went to a village of like 100 people. They are raising and costing our economy $1 trillion just because of this crazy village. So the oceans rise. They said that the oceans were going to rise somewhere between 5 and 6 millimeters per year. It's actually between 2 and 3. They mismeasured. They took the greatest measurement. They lie all the time. This is a real difficult part for a conservative who, I am a science guy. Okay, if the oceans are rising, I want to know how much they're rising by. I want to know what the catastrophic event's going to be. Here's the problem. 2 or 3 millimeters a year is not catastrophic. It's not even anything people would worry about. It's certainly not the 20 feet that Al Gore claimed in his crazy movie, right? I mean, they said we're going to go up in 50 years. We're going to have 20-foot higher oceans. That's how crazy the left is, and they still think that's true, by the way. So here I am, a science guy, a conservative, who wants the real numbers, except they don't publish the real numbers. They publish fake numbers that have, error intervals 200, 300% over what the reality is. It's maddening. So here you've got Kivalina. In Kivalina, climate change isn't a distant theory. Residents are faced with new challenges every spring. Some estimates show by 2025, the village will be completely wiped out by rising sea levels. BS. It's 120. Alaska's eroding all the time. We've been eroding since forever. And some idiot built a village essentially on an isthmus that is being battered constantly by the ocean. It's like, I don't know, it's like saying the Homer spit which thankfully has survived a long period of time, but that's probably because they improved it. But it's like saying the Homer Spit is at risk of being eroded by rising oceans. No, Kivalina is not at risk from rising oceans. It's at risk because some idiot built it. And by the way, here's what they're going to do. For a cost of $1 million a structure, $1 million a structure, going to move this town 9 miles inward. This is $1 trillion fundraising campaign. Eyeless Prez in a topless jar. Islamic terror? I just don't see it. So it's odd that our president cannot understand that ISIS is a wing of radical Islam. And it kind of baffles the mind. We're not really sure what to make of this guy who leads the free world, because everybody else sees it for what it is. And if you try and figure out where he's coming from and exactly what he knows, what he thinks, I think you come up with the position that he's such an equalitarian and egalitarian. Well, I love America just like the Greeks love Greece. Well, they're bankrupt. I guess maybe we're headed there too. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Anyway, it's very difficult for a rational person to try and figure out this president. When we come back, I'll be covering what exactly Walker is up to and why it could be good news. It's hard to say, but it could also cost us all of the money that we have saved since we became a state. 28 minutes after the hour, it is the Glen Biegel Show, 95.1 KOAN, 1080KOAN.com. 27 minutes before the end of the show and the end of the hour, and just a few minutes before we give away that beautiful $50 bouquet from My Lord's Floral. 522-2535, dot at mylordsfloral.com. It gives this away every Friday here on the Glen Biegel Show. So make sure to give us a call for that here at the end of the segment. 569-1080 is the number if you want that $50 bouquet. Tammy Wilson's going to be on with us here in just a moment. Let me tell you about Earhart Roofing before we get to her. 345-5555. That will get you to Frank, James, and Becky over at Earhart Roofing. And there really is no job that they cannot do. With 60 employees and 25 trucks, the no job is too big. And if you've ever seen their work sites, you will be amazed, and you'll know exactly why they were Better Business Bureau Business of the Year. That's across all companies, not just roofing companies, and not just in one part of the state. All companies, the whole state of Alaska, best company of the year for 2010. It's an amazing accomplishment, and no other roofer, I would say, will ever do it. 345-5555. At least include Earhart in your contract, in your request. And if you want a free roofing estimate, it's just a phone call away. 345-5555. When you think roofing, think Earhart, E-A-R-H-A-R-T. Let me go to the phones here and talk to Representative Tammy Wilson. Representative Wilson, thanks for calling.
Hey, not a problem.
It seems like a pretty wild situation going on down there in Juneau. Exxon made basically they backed out of, or they look like they're going to back out of pursuing a gas line, is the way I read it. I'd like to get your take on it and then get updates on the budget and many other things.
Well, it's not really surprising that a private company would back out when you're going to compete with them with a state-funded project. I mean, what message are we sending, to those who want to invest in Alaska, that as soon as you do, we're going to use our own and change the direction of our plans? I just think it was a really bad call of the governor.
Yeah, this follows along his view that somehow the people who want to buy the gas are going to allow Alaska to make a whole bunch of money off the gas. They're really not going to charge us anything, but they're going to give us $65 billion. Is he right?
Well, first of all, you have to assume we have money. And
we got the permanent fund, right? He's going to put
the permanent fund for the people.
Yeah.
We do not have the permanent fund to be able to raid for any kind of project. Now seems like a good time for.
Isn't he going to put that at risk, though, if he does this?
Well, I don't think the legislature lets him go there.
Okay.
I think the sad part for Alaskans is, again, we get really close to what looks like a viable project, and we change what we're doing and getting back into that steady money again. And we'll end up with nothing at the end of the day.
Well, I have a feeling that you're right. The judgment I'm going to make is if he goes out and finds $65 billion to build the stuff, then he will have done something that I guess we're going to put up some risk. The question is, who's going to take all the risk? I guess that's a big question in my mind.
Well, if you can find private sector money to find $65 billion, yep. I think that would be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and that what we know right now, though, is that we've taken a step back, right? We know that for sure.
A huge step back.
Yeah, because Exxon has said, we're not competing with the state of Alaska. If you guys want to do a project, we're out.
Well, not just that, we put money into this plan, so we've wasted money again. As it turned out, it wasn't a waste at the time, but if we were going to turn completely different directions, and I don't think Exxon will be the only one you see go out, because private companies, we do it over and over again, can't compete with the state. And we're seeing it again with a possible trucking project now with Ada, a state, ran type company, getting in the way of Hillcorp, a private company, because they think now they can do it better coming with gas to Fairbanks from south to north, when they told us, a year and a half ago, that the one going from the North Slope down to Fairbanks would be affordable. What makes you think that's going to turn out any different?
Well, here's what the question I have for this, and we're talking with Representative Tammy Wilson here on the Glen Biegel Show, 569-1080. The question I have is Ada a competitor of Hillcorp?
Absolutely.
Okay, well then how could they possibly have gotten a favorable judgment from the state of Alaska and the state of Alaska not have shared some private information with them?
There's a lot of questions with this whole thing. Somebody goes, what's your problem with it? I go, it just doesn't smell right, and there's no transparency in it. And I think, from my understanding, Hillcorp was very close to buying, if not buying it, just going through the rest of the regulatory process that we require, when they kind of got stepped on by us.
I agree. Well, that's that's the thing I would establish, because if Ada is a competitor of Hillcorp, there's all kinds of restrictions, and the state of Alaska, I don't see how they couldn't have shared in some information, the wrong kind of information. You remember Randy Riedrich got in trouble for asking for an opinion about a gas situation, and so did Scott Ogan with Evergreen out in the gas situation in the Mat-Su Valley. The state of Alaska and regulators are not allowed to share any information, any private information about a corporate deal with anyone under any circumstance. It is against the law.
So are you telling me that in 2010, when Fairbanks Natural Gas actually took a trucking project to, Ada at that time with a lot of that kind of information in there may not be something they should remember?
Well, look, these are the kind of questions you guys are going to have to ask, and I know it's going to take some strength. But we are a country of laws, and if these laws have been broken, if people are shading the truth, and they're giving information that allow for a state-run corporation to have a leg up and an advantage over a private corporation, or even sharing any information, you guys have got to get to the bottom of that.
Well, and even if none of that's true, let's say everything is above board. Where do we get off competing with private business?
Mm-hmm.
And, here we say we have less and less money, things need to go to private, we need to grow business, grow our own type of thing versus the state having all the jobs. And the first time you see it happening during this big deficit, we step on them. And then we stepped on them there, we stepped on the gas line now. I mean, what else are we going to say the state can still do better when in reality, we're not doing our own? And, I saw on a sheet here, you wanted to talk about Medicaid too. Talk about another insanity. Medicaid expansion, we can't even take care of those that are on Medicaid correctly. And now we're going to expand it just because it looks like it's free. I'm telling you, there is nothing free.
There's nothing free. I have a big question about whether or not there's new money in this. I had one other thing that I wanted to ask you here about the Hillcorp deal. And really, it gets to the question of what is it that the state can or can't do. You're right that we said that we were running out of money, and then all of a sudden we come up with $53 million to compete. Here's what the governor said when he was on my program, by the way. He said, well, if the state can get involved and save 25 or 30 or 35% for the consumer, then he thinks it should. My question to you is, how does the state save 20 to 25 to 30% over a corporate deal unless the regulator is forcing people to sell something at a price that they wouldn't normally do?
Not just that. I'm from North Pole. We burn wood and we burn coal. They're going to beat that by 25%. I'd sure like to see those numbers. And even if we're even talking about oil at the price it is right now, they'll be lucky they can even compete with oil, not even counting all the change outs that are going to have to be done in people's homes to do it. And, we were told, Fairbanks is actually okay when it comes to heating our homes if the state would say we're more important than the EPA is. Because we have affordably taken care of our homes and getting more and more technical and more cleaner types things of doing it. They have decided, the state and DEC, that we need this gas, but they know good and well they cannot get it to us at a price that makes sense. That's long past when they export all that over to Asia, when they had the cheaper gas in Cook Inlet. It's never going to be at that price ever again. So we're even going to be starting at a higher price. And the insanity part of it to me is they already know that. So they're just going to go through this study, act like they're doing something, and guess what? In April's going to be, it didn't work out so well. And Hillcorp's going to be, well, if it didn't work out for you, why would we want to do it? And we're going to be right back in the same boat again.
Representative Tammy Wilson's with us. Can you stay with us, please?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to put her on hold. I got to announce this. The My Lord's Floral giveaway, we're going to start it right now. If you'll call number 4 at 569-1080, a $50 bouquet, courtesy of Dot at mylordsfloral.com. And you will be the winner of that. It's just a beautiful arrangement, and they have a great business over there. They've been a longtime sponsor and friend of the program. Give us a call right now, 569-1080. It is Free Flower Friday, and we are starting it up right now. Caller number 4, 569-1080. And we'll be back with Tammy Wilson when we come back. I want to ask her about this forced reduction that we are looking to undertake here in the state of Alaska. We don't know whether or not they're going to hit our bases, but if they do, boy, will that ever be brutal. 569-1080 if you want the My Lord's Floral, 569-1080. Give us a call. 13 minutes before the hour. The Glen Biegel Show here on 95.1 KOAN, 1080KOAN.com. We stream live there. And happy Friday, everybody. Happy Free Flower Friday and also Fair Game Friday. Anything on your mind is fair game. On the phones with us, we have Representative Tammy Wilson, and a lot left to cover and not a whole lot of time. Give me your understanding of this force reduction that they are looking at doing here on our Army bases.
Well, the sad thing is I think they go all over the place to be able to do it. I think at least for Fairbanks and Anchorage as well. First of all, we don't compete with each other. We're supportive of each other. I don't think you see that in all the states that there are. So I think that the information that's going to be given will be good on that. We're burning coal up there versus diesel, keeps the cost going. But the biggest thing is people have to show up. I mean, that really is one of the big measurements that are done, is based on community involvement and then community being able to speak up for all the wonderful things that happen, plus the strategic portion that we play.
Well, it's a huge deal. It comes up Monday, 5 to 6 p.m. out at Denina Center, and the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation is a good place to find out information about it, aedcweb.com. We're looking at potentially losing 5,000 soldiers from our base here and an additional 5,000 up in Fairbanks from Fort Wainwright. I mean, it would be, of course, absolutely devastating to Fairbanks, and it would be $500 million out of our local economy here.
And we'll be at the Carlson Center. We're sending a couple of representatives there. The rest of us will be using video conferencing, trying to cut down on some state spending, showing that we can have our support, have our voice without necessarily being there in person. But we're trying to get at least 500 to 600. I think you're trying for 1,000 people to be there.
Well, I'd like to see 15,000.
50,000. Yeah, that'd be
15.
better. 15.
Well,
people think they have to testify.
Right.
It's great for the ones that do, but numbers do make a difference.
Yeah, and we are up against all these other places, and they've been keeping track of how many people showed up other places. There are 30 bases which are on the reduction block, and we have 2 of them here in our state.
And I think we're a little bit better about getting out lately, because between Eielson and Fort Wainwright, it's almost become a yearly thing. So we kind of keep it geared up, keep that support going. And the sad thing is we shouldn't have to, because it should be really based on strategic areas, how much airspace you have, everything Alaska has to offer that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, well, I know that they're going to take that into consideration, but they also want to know about the community support for the military and all of the other amenities that people have for the military. All right, coastal zone management came up, and I couldn't believe it. You are one of the 2 people who voted right both times you had a chance to vote. I guess the Senate stripped out the support for the law of the sea treaty. What happened here?
I think, as we have a 90-day session, every once in a while something kind of pokes out faster. We're used to things coming through finance. And I think a lot of them just didn't understand what the law of the sea did. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, although we did tell them on the floor how even with Ronald Reagan, the reasons that he didn't like it, why it hasn't passed, through the United States. There's a reason it hasn't. And so I was surprised that the amendment didn't pass. I was more surprised with people who, voted for the amendment and then voted for the bill, with it still being in there. And you got to send a message that these things aren't right. And then it's like, as far as you said too, with the coastal zone management being spread out in it, first of all, in my opinion, it should have been only a resolution. I still don't understand why it was a bill.
So tell us about coastal zone management. What's the situation? Who has the power right now between the state of Alaska and the feds? Would it be better if we implemented coastal zone management? Because I have real doubts as to whether or not this bill is good at all.
No, that's what I mean. I don't think it should have been a bill in the first place. I think it was a resolution more than anything else. And they put it in coastal zone management. It's my understanding that right now that there is a voice from those communities. I never could understand exactly what more voice they had with another 25 state workers intermixed in what was going on. We're part of the Arctic Council now. Alaska takes the seat at the helm there. I don't think more government makes better voices for the people. So, I was against the coastal zone management when it came up, through the whole thing, when it had a ballot measure. I think the people in Alaska, of all things, have really spoken pretty strongly that this is not the way they want to go. And then to me, this, kind of putting it in and the underlying, it's not where you just see it and it says coastal zone management. That's just not the way you do things.
Talking with Representative Tammy Wilson from Fairbanks, and one of the people who read the bill and then they vote based on whether or not they like the bill or don't like the bill. A lot of other people, is there a lot of pressure being applied by somebody? What is going on in Juneau that we would support the law of the sea treaty, which I would say the vast majority of at least conservatives here in our state don't like?
We had another, I can't remember if it was a bill or resolution, and there was several of us who spoke against it then too, and that's why when they put in the majority of us wanted it. I didn't even like the language of that, and the same way my colleagues did what they did, I couldn't understand it because I thought, on certain big apps, we're pretty much speaking in one voice, but I was definitely wrong this time.
Well, I'm glad that the Senate, the people stood up, because the Senate listened and they stripped it out. So at least it's gone right now. We'll have to watch for it to rear its ugly head one more time. Again, talking here with Representative Tammy Wilson. Had a fascinating discussion with Harriet Drummond on the program. I think it was yesterday. And I asked her, it doesn't look like with the Governor Walker adding back in $20 million of, quote, found money, that he is very serious about getting us to a balanced budget in any way. If we end up with a $2.5 or $3 billion budget deficit, who will you prioritize money for? People keeping money in their pockets or state government? She came out very bravely, and I think very accurately. She'll prioritize state money, state spending over people keeping money in their pockets. How would you answer that?
We have to cut. We have to. We were put here this year knowing we were going into a minimum of a $3.5 billion. I've heard as high as $4 billion at this point. And a few percentages we're hearing from the governor. He's got Medicaid expansion in there saying it's going to save all this money plus another 24 state workers. It's going to come from all the departments. There's, in all the areas of the state. And I'm getting ready to close my labor budget on Monday. And I've already heard from people in this building, well, you can't cut my program. What do I do to put it back in? You don't understand. If it doesn't meet the mission statement, for instance, of the Department of Labor, and money's going to the high schools versus putting people back to work, we can't have it in the budget any longer. And those are the decisions we were put here to make. And if we go back with a 3 to 5%, as the governor has put, and I believe he said 16 when he was running, I don't think.
Well, yeah, he said 25, and he was just going to do it over 5 years, a 5 to 8% cut every year. No, but when
he ran, he said 16% in the first year. He didn't start that 25% over 3 or 4 years until he became governor.
All right. Well, here's my suggestion, by the way. I thought I heard 5 to 8% is what he said he was going to do. He gave us a 2.4% reduction. Okay, so he's nowhere near what it was that he even promised us. Here's what I suggest you do. Just say, it's up to the governor to tell us where he wants to cut, but we will help him keep his promise. We are going to reduce every budget 8% unless he tells us where else to cut it. And that's just him keeping his promise.
Well, and even the percentages he's cut, they're not even true cuts. Because literally, like I said, he's starting a new federal program, so he's backing out general fund money and putting in his federal money in something he doesn't even know whether will make the savings, finding us up with another federal, contract that may be 100% for this, but those 24 workers we were talking about, that's only 50% that the federal government pays. So the other 50% we pay here, and then another 10% after a year or two, and it just keeps going down that line. So, that small percentage you talked about, most of that was based on filling general funds aren't true cuts. And we need to, and cutting vacant positions. If you're cutting vacant positions, where's the money right now for this year when there hasn't been anybody there? Yeah. There's a little bit more money we can gain.
Well, I'm really glad you're there. I know that the average people do not have much of an impact on the legislature, and that's by design, in my opinion, because they keep the legislature sequestered away from the rest of us so we can tell.
You mean Juneau should be on the road system? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I'm just saying that the only people who can afford to go down there, those are lobbyists who don't want you to cut anything. They're not paid to go down there and ask you to cut programs.
You're right. It belongs on the road system. And people say it needs to be on the road system. There's one main thing nobody says. They're back to my district in North Pole because things are happening that I need to be there for, and I can't get back there. So it's two ways. Our constituents can hardly get to us, and then when we really need to be in our areas, we can't get to them. I mean, it is long overdue, at least for the legislature part of it, that it doesn't go back. And I don't care if it's Anchorage, Willow, Fairbanks, wherever.
Maybe one on the road. Rotate it around.
Hey, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, in order for you guys to be able to hear the voice of the people have to be able to be with you, in my opinion.
Hey, you're right. And we do get emails and we get calls. I read all my own emails. I think I got quite a few hundred to do tonight still. But people, they have to call. Even though we are here in Juneau, if they don't say anything, government gets out of control even more. Their voice does make a difference. It really does.
Representative Tammy Wilson is on the phone with us. You know what the result, if you guys, in my mind, fail, and the Democrats aren't going to help at all, so it's really up to you conservatives to do this, we will be paying north of $10,000 per family because there aren't that many jobs that actually make enough money to pay taxes. So everybody who will pay taxes will pay over $10,000 to fund this government.
I think we better get our job. We better do it right.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be easy without a governor who is going to help move the ball down the field.
Yes, but we appropriate, so it really is in our courts.
All right. Well, good luck. Tammy Wilson, thanks so much for being on with me. This has been the Glen Biegel Show. You're listening to KOAN.